Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Human Factors Cast. This is episode 316. We're recording this episode live on March 3rd. No, March 5th. March 5th, 2020. I had to check the date. Why did I put third in there? Maybe this is when the show notes were live. I don't know. March 5th, 2026. Again, Human Factors Cast. We're starting off great. I'm your host, Nick Rome, joined today by Mr. Barry Kirby.
Who wrote the show notes and didn't realize that I was reading English and not American dates. So yes, that's entirely my fault. Hi.
Hi. How you doing on March 3rd over there? Are you in the past?
It was great. Yeah. No, how was it in March 5th?
It's great over here, man. All right. We got a great show for you lined up for you tonight. We're going to be talking about space. Space, all things space. And I love this because it is not AI. All right. So let's do the space talk. But first, any programming notes from you, Barry?
So in 1202 land, as mentioned the other week, February's episode is up, a chat with Martin Thodey, who's the current president of the CIHF. And it's great to get his perspective and chat with him about how he finds it being president. And we sort of chat about what comparing our experiences. This month's interviews is kind of around the corner. It's going to go live in a week or so, but we're also looking forward to April because it's going to be EHF 2026, which is the annual conference of the CIHF. So I'm hoping to be able to come out of that with a whole bunch of conference gossip, and I'm hoping if I can actually remember to take my power cables this year, that we'll get some interviews and things like that while we're there. So I'm not actually doing, I have no official responsibilities. I have I'm not delivering any papers or anything like that. So I'm going to be a mere observer of things. I'm going to be enjoying chatting to people. So I'm hoping to bring that to you. And just a reminder that if you're using the 1202 website, then you need to be using 1202pod.com. So 1202pod.com. Otherwise, you apparently get viruses and stuff if you go to the old website because people are nasty and horrible. So yeah, so that's it for 1202.
We've done a great job with this intro, Barry. We've full competence on display. And while we're talking about competence, I figured this is a great time to plug the lab. If you want to work with a bunch of competent people that is not me and Barry, they are much more capable than us.
You can tell who makes the show happen, and it's not us.
That's a thing you can do. Reach out, let us know what your situation is, and it's a volunteer lab, and there's plenty of great folks in there working on great things that are really great, focused on communication in the field of human factors. So there's my once every 6 months plug for the lab. So let me know if you're interested. All right, why don't we go ahead and get into the news? That's right. This is the part of the show all about human factors news. Barry, I only managed to mess up my lines once or twice. So let's see how you do here. What's the story this week?
I don't know what you're trying to say. It's not AI. We are not talking about AI. How exciting is this? Instead, we're heading into space, but we're looking at it through a very human factors lens. And both of the stories we're discussing highlight something we talk about a lot on this show, the relationship between humans and increasingly complex systems. Whether that's astronauts working within one of the most ambitious engineering programs in history, or scientists trying to make sense of vast streams of automated data coming in from modern observatories. So we've got two really interesting examples tonight. One about how organizations manage risk and complexity in human spaceflight, and another about what happens when technology generates more information than humans can realistically process. So let's start with NASA. NASA has announced a major overhaul to its Artemis program, the effort to return humans to the moon for the first time since the Apollo missions. The agency is now targeting 2028 for the first crewed lunar landing, pushing things back in order to add more testing and demonstrations before attempting the landing itself. The concern is that Artemis involves a lot of first-time operations, new spacecraft, orbital docking maneuvers, the lunar landing system, all working together in a single mission. So NASA is effectively slowing things down to reduce risk and better understand how these systems interact before astronauts actually head for the lunar surface. The 2027 Artemis 3 mission will be used to get at least one lunar lander into a low Earth orbit, meaning that either SpaceX and or Blue Origin will get to make most of the opportunity to use one of their lunar landers. Also, the new spacesuit made by Axiom Space is going to get tested. So, from a human factors perspective, this raises some really interesting questions about system complexity, operational risk, and how organizations decide when a system is truly ready for humans to rely on. Nick, how do you feel about this delay to the program? Do you think it's a good thing, bad thing, or are they just hiding?
Do you want little child Nick, who is probably really upset that he can't watch a moon landing for another few years, or do you want here in direct opposition about their feelings on this?
Well, let's go for young Nick first, and then bring in sensible Nick later.
All right. Young Nick is very disappointed and sad that he can't watch moon landing. And you know, as a dad too, my son is really into space right now. In fact, he was very interested about how YouTube thumbnails are made because I showed him the space background for this one. He's like, "How do people make thumbnails?" So from that perspective, disappointed that I can't share that excitement with my son or my past self to experience the joy of a moon landing. Just gotta wait a few more years. That being said, the human factor side of me is actually really happy to see this. This is systems engineering on display. I think this is really cool to see a priority on safety. And especially when you think back to some of the more recent events here, um, with like astronaut health, they had to bring back an astronaut from the International Space Station, and especially with space disasters in the past, I think having safety as a front and center consideration for something like space exploration is amazing. Putting that safety in the public view is really cool. It actually elevates our field in a lot of ways because yes, safety is a huge part of this, and the systems approach is actually a huge part of this too. Being able to see this progress in these chunks or these smaller iterative missions that go through and add little pieces of complexity to like they said a large um operation that has many moving pieces with many new pieces of technology. It's going to be much better to spot anything that's going wrong with the program at those um in those situations rather than wait for an on go of trying to conduct a moon landing. I think this is pretty cool to see, actually, from a human factors perspective, especially when systems are all working together. Um, your takes are because I know you've talked to folks from NASA in the past.
Yeah, thanks for teeing up. Just a nice little plug there. Yeah, so we in 2022, I think it was, we spoke to people from the Artemis program, particularly the Orion program, and that was from like season 2 to 13. And it was really interesting to chat to them about what they're doing. So when you consider that these people have been into this for such a long period of time, I sort of get from their perspective they're gonna be disappointed in this delay in the way that it's gone. But I think, as you say, I think it's a from a safety perspective, it's if there's any sort of fear, concern at the moment, the right thing to do is to pause it and see where you go with it. Um, the I guess the other element to it is um, how they recover from this, how they make the most of that opportunity, and what they do. I guess the interesting thing from a organizational part of this is actually the attitude of the NASA administrator. So the NASA administrator now is Jared Isaacman, and if you've not heard the name before, you think you've heard the name before. He was actually the commander of Inspiration 4, which was the first all civilian spaceflight by SpaceX. Very much a buddy of Elon Musk. He's a self-made billionaire, I believe, and really seen as a some people accused him of buying his way into that SpaceX mission, but he was actually, he's put the time and effort in to be a trained astronaut. Um, so it was interesting when he got made NASA administrator by this administration. Many believing that Elon Musk pushed for him to be there because they're buddies. So there was a lot of fear at the time of him coming along and pushing a more of a, I guess we could call it a SpaceX approach, the fail fast, and just do things quickly and get things moving, because we know SpaceX has basically had a lot of failure to get where it's up to, but obviously very successfully. So I think a lot of people expected to see NASA almost change to maybe this more commercial approach. He's also been really critical, or he's been a real proponent now of seeming to bring things out into the open more than what even NASA has done in the past. So he recently, and I think it was either yesterday or today, did a went on the record in a briefing about the Boeing Starliner program. And we obviously saw the Boeing Starliner have issues getting to the International Space Station, and then there'd be issues around actually will they be able to bring their own astronauts home? And in fact, they didn't in the end. It made an automated return. But Jared then did this briefing, which lifted the lid on not only the findings of the failures of Boeing, but also NASA itself, in terms of organization and safety culture and things. So I think where a lot of people expected Jared to be this maybe fly by the seat of his pants type approach, when he's got into NASA, he's really lent into this safety culture. And so that's really, I think, really interesting to see from a perspective. And also, I also wonder whether he did go into it thinking he would bring in this new culture, but actually realized that NASA is just a different beast. Because NASA really does have to put safety first. It's not like, this is where I think the difference is. I'm not saying commercial companies do not put safety first, but NASA really has to have the golden thread to all of this. It has to be whiter than white, cleaner than clean when it's doing this stuff, because it's a government organization, because it's government funded. They have to make sure that the safety of the citizens absolutely comes first. And as we saw with some of when they've had some previous catastrophes, reputation is such a fragile thing and gets damaged so quickly. So I'm really sort of excited by the ironically by this safety culture still being present. We're such a bunch of geeks, aren't we? Getting excited by the safety culture. But I think it's absolutely true that that we're saying that we're excited by the fact that the safety culture hasn't been eroded. In fact, you could argue it's been strengthened. And the fact that, but they're also not saying it's all off until they've done it. They're saying we want to use the opportunity to then also advance the science, so they can test these landers that they want to play with, and also in doing some of the background around this, because I was particularly interested in the Axiom spacesuit. I also learned why spacesuits are orange, which was interesting for me. So you'll see the spacesuits when they're actually in space are all white, but when they actually get into the rocket, into the spacecraft, they're wearing orange suits, and they wear the orange suits for launch and re-entry. So if there is an incident, that bright orange doesn't occur in nature, and
You'd be
so
able to
they
find
should,
the bodies quickly.
well, easy to find, if there's injuries and whatever, to recover,
Hmm.
recover crews and or bodies in the worst case. But yeah, I didn't. It's them sort of little things that when somebody explains it, you're like, well, of course, that's obvious, that's brilliant. But it's the sort of things you don't think about. That's why you have specialists doing things. So yeah, I think it's interesting. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, if I were to temper my expectations, or not my expectations, if I were to temper my excitement about this and sort of offer a critical lens on it, the critical human factors practitioner in me says, why wasn't all the safety stuff considered at program or earlier on? Yeah, I guess better late than never. Um, I think there's also some risk associated with this approach too. It's a double-edged sword because if you're sort of increasing this launch cadence, if you're launching more rockets, there's sort of more opportunities for things like things to go wrong. I'll just say it that
Mhm.
way. There's more opportunities for things to go wrong, even if you're testing iteratively. So I think if I were to come at it with a critical lens, which we often do right off the bat, I just wanted to flip the script here and be excited about something for first, and then say, here's my critical take. We do it all here, folks. That's the human factors promise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
I mean,
yeah,
it is an interesting thing where you talk about where you mention about why didn't they do it off the bat? And I guess there could almost be two answers to that. One is that yeah, they've just been not negligent, but maybe they just haven't considered it early enough, and they should have done. But it could also be evolving issues within the program itself.
sure.
And so there is a whole bunch of you know, new stuff going on. And if people have felt pressured, it is really a chief engineer's call of turning around and saying, we just not there yet. They're pushing and pushing and pushing. And you know, good engineering teams work well under stress. Their good engineering teams will move mountains, but sometimes the mountain is just too big, and it takes a really good engineering manager, chief engineer, to turn around and say, "Look, we are we passed that peak stress stage where actually it's just getting dangerous, and we just not evolving as quick as we need to in a safe manner." So my feeling from this story and the reading I've done around it is I think we're more in that latter where they just haven't they're just not developing on pace, and there's critical things that are just not happening, and so somebody's made a a brave call, I think. So it'd be interesting to know. I've not been able to find out anywhere, but it'd be interesting to know where the call came from. Um, you know, it's somebody will take responsibility, but somebody lower down the food chain will have started going, this isn't working, this isn't
Mhm.
right, and how that reporting cadence went up to see whether um how quickly that was acted upon. Because if somebody was raising the concerns a year ago and it's only just come to light, that's almost as bad as what you were saying, where or suggesting could have been the case if they didn't, you know, if they didn't know right at the beginning. But if this has been a fairly recent thing, you know, within the past, normally a review would be maybe anywhere within 3 months. That's for something this large. That's probably about the right sort of cadence.
Yeah. I was looking all around my desk for a prop, like a coin. So I guess we can use this. This is just a mount for equipment.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a two-sided coin, right? And I think this story has a lot, and I tend to think about this as like, yeah, I run a human factors communication lab. I have to think about the communication aspect of this, right? So I'm thinking about this, the whole, like, here's side one, right? This is, I guess, the more sexy side, and this is the
Yeah.
more structural side. Okay, the sexy side. A moon landing is sexy. A moon landing is cool. A moon landing is exciting, and it can generate a lot of public like support for this type of thing. Um, and here's the flip side, the structure, right? The structure, the slowdown, it's less cinematic than a shot straight to the moon. It's less cinematic, but I think in a lot of ways it reinforces the structure. See, it reinforces the idea that we are looking at caution not as something that we shy away from, but rather that we embrace, in our engineering teams. And I think that's beautiful. I think also, if you think about the again, the structural side, if you have these structure these different schedule changes because of unresolved issues, if the public sees under the hood here, what does
Mm.
that mean? Well, it could lead to less trust in some of these like hugely government funded programs, which is not a good thing, right? So that's the ugly side of the coin. But again, on the flip side, hey, look, if you do a good job after this course correction and everything goes well, this actually does model very well what having these safety review checkpoints or having some sort of what good accountability in engineering teams actually looks like. And so I think there's a lot of a lot of beauty and ugliness, but exposing that structure to the public is I think ultimately a good thing. I just think that there's a lot that, depending on the execution here, the way that folk engineering, our field of human factors, safety critical system, is largely going to be impacted by big decisions like this. So I'm very interested to see how this all plays out, and I really hope that this is a good schedule change that ultimately leads to more trust in these types of programs focusing on safety.
So do you think then that given, I mean, we're obviously very much around human factors communication. It's something we believe passionately in, hence we do things like this. Do you think that people like NASA, um, and particularly say NASA HF people, should be considering the impact to public trust, public perception, when considering things like this, given that this is a public body? I'm just thinking back to films like, I mean, it's a bad thing, but
The
the Martian,
Martian,
for example,
yeah.
they bought in that bit, but also go back to Apollo 13, and there was them discussions there around what's going on, and when things were going wrong, then they shut everybody out in order to deal with the problem. Then nobody knew what was going on, and it wasn't until afterwards that, or sort of immediately after, or people, there was a void where people are going, well, this is happening, and other people were filling that gap. Do you think is this a human factors thought that we should maybe have more about perception?
That's a fascinating question. And I think ultimately public relations is not our job. Our job is not to spin good human factors practice into something that is acceptable for the public. What is our job is to make sure that these things that are, safety critical, mission critical tasks, and systems operate as they should. I think that's not to say that human factors can't have a role in PR. I'm just saying that I don't think the people working on the systems should be the people concerned about the messaging to the public. I think if you were to ask me structurally, I think there should be an embedded human factors person in the PR team, right? That
Yeah.
then communicate, that is the liaison between those working on the systems and communicating with the public. Like, hey, we're making, here's the bullet point list. We're making sure that these things are safety and that this is the reasoning behind. And then it's up to the PR team to spin that and say why this is a good thing. So if you were to ask me, no, I don't think the people working on directly on the systems, that's not their job.
So let 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 me challenge you,
Go ahead.
um, because it's fun, isn't it? So I would have absolutely said what you just said, in the grand scheme of things, because it's PR teams are PR teams for a reason. They're really good at it. But I've been doing a lot of work recently and today in human machine teaming and trust, right? And kind of what we've just been talking about, saying that, well, that NASA is a public body and all that sort of stuff. Part of the machine, the overall system, because part of why we do space is because we can. To quote Kennedy, it's not, we don't do things because they're easy, we do them because they're difficult, and they provide targets for government and basically hope for the citizens. So if we're doing something like this, and considering the wider impact, I'm not saying that we should be involved in delivering the spin, but should it be a consideration in saying, well, actually, because we want to show that we have safer engineering, yes, let's put it back and make sure we communicate that to the public as quickly as possible? Or do we just steer away from that public thing completely? I don't know. I honestly, from my own perspective, I don't know what the answer is right now. I think that in when considering the wider system, so considering the wider ambitions of the program and why it exists, I think there might be value in considering it in a way that I've not considered it before.
It's very interesting that you say all this because in the day job, a lot of times, what we'll do is help craft a message around some of the things that we've been implementing in the system, and that message goes off to leadership, and it's up to leadership to pick and choose what they want to disseminate, to communicate what changes have been made to the system. And so we very carefully craft that message. And a lot of times, our relationship with leadership is very good. And so they'll take what we say and not change much. And that's
Hmm.
good because then we've thought about what is the best way that's easily digestible, to understand what has changed with the system, what process or procedure that you need to do in order to do XYZ task or workflow. So there's a lot of things that do go into it. And so when I initially made my no, it's not their job. It it could be,
Mm.
it could be part of it. I think, in a lot of ways it's part of my day to day, and I don't even think about it like that. I think about it as like assisting with communication about the things that we built, and um not necessarily a messaging outward public facing thing, because it's to a subset of users, right? And I guess you could flip that and say, hey, here's the message that we want to convey to people who might be unfamiliar with this. I think I was thinking of it in two different ways, right? One is messaging to the users of thing, and then one is messaging to the public. But in a lot of ways, I it's already embedded in my process. So sure, Barry, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's start doing that.
Think of the world. So I'm just having a quick look as well at the Artemis spacesuit. So the by Axiom Space. Um, Again, so it's slightly outside the bounds of the story to a certain extent, but again, it's interesting seeing the differences between that spacesuit and what we've seen going up in other NASA missions, but also with SpaceX, because obviously SpaceX has a I guess a much leaner, should we say,
Hmm.
spacesuit, one that is less bulky. It obviously doesn't have to do the same role, the same job in the same way, but it's interesting seeing that evolution and the different people get involved in that development. So Axiom has brought together, I believe, Prada and Oakley into this development, which is not names you'd normally associate with a NASA space launch. Um, but yeah, so I think that might be a subject for a future discussion around
I
about that type of thing.
I think we actually might have ties to that spacesuit too, like in the lab. I need to go back and check, but I'm pretty sure we have somebody in the lab that's worked either on some element of that. I need to go check.
Yes, now you said that, I think we do.
I think we do
Yes.
too. Okay.
Uh,
All right. Speaking of communication, do we want to get into this next story?
no, I want to say talking about this one. No, but we'll stay in space. But we're going to shift from astronauts to astronomers. And our second story highlights a completely different type of challenge to what we've just been talking about. Astronomers working with a new observatory that constantly scans the night sky recently woke up to something like 800,000 automated alerts generated in a single night. 800,000. 800,000. These alerts are triggered when the system detects anything that changes in the sky, and that could be asteroids, supernova, changes to stars, or anything else that moves or suddenly appears. This technology is incredibly powerful, clearly, but it creates a classic human factors problem: information overload. So, when machines can generate hundreds of thousands of signals in a matter of hours, the real challenge becomes designing systems that help humans decide what actually matters to them. So, this story is a great example of what the growing challenge of a human machine collaboration in a data rich environment can be, where the limiting factor isn't sensors or computers anymore. It's the human ability to interpret and prioritize what they're telling us. Nick, 800,000 messages in one night. How are you coping with that?
Alert fatigue. Yay. Cognitive overload. Wahoo. Look, there's real challenges here with trying to parse 800,000 messages a night. And I think, well, I'm sure we'll talk more about it, but sorting and filtering these messages to what's applicable to certain astronomers, what's applicable to certain scientists, is going to be a huge boon with this issue of trying to find a needle in a haystack. Right? I think there's going to be so many cool things and cool discoveries here, but it's like drinking water through a fire hose where you need to be able to understand what is being blasted at you and how to take that information and make it relevant to you. And so I don't have a whole lot of initial thoughts other than I'm excited to dive in, and this is going to be a good one. What are your first takeaways there, Barry?
Well, I mean, first up, how cool to be able to get so much data and to be and then to be directed on where all them changes are. I mean, so what we're talking about is the Vera C, Rubin Observatory, which is just newly opened, and this was a trial run. Um, and when you look at what they're trying to do, if you can, I guess, straight up task analysis, let's do some casual observation. And astronomers are sat there and looking, because the sky's massive, and it sounds like such an obvious thing to say, but it really is. When you're looking, and as we get more powerful telescopes, you can see deeper into something that you don't know where the end is. And so any little change that you can see, I mean, we see stars twinkling in the sky and things like that. But for an astronomer, that's a significant event because you can see, why is it twinkling? What's it doing? So just to see one small change on a 360 view that is just getting denser and denser as the technology gets better, how do you even track that? How do you understand that, note it down, keep your records as it's getting bigger? How do you even start with that data analysis? So that is just a massive challenge. So while we're not talking about AI in this episode, this is still a hugely powerful system that is providing massive amounts of information that fundamentally needs to be sorted, sifted, and allocated to the right people. Because we're not really talking about one person getting 800,000 messages, so, though I'm sure there's some system administrator there going, oh dear God, as they get copies of everything. But assuming that the certain areas will be allocated to certain astronomers, and so they can do their bit. That's a lot of data being filtered to different people. It'll be interesting to know sort of what filtering do they have in place to filter in, filter out things. What controls do you have? Um, I've worked on systems, on quite a lot of systems that around, particularly around alerting and things like that. And alert management and message management is just such a huge topic to try and make sure that the most important stuff gets to the top of the list, so it gets put in front of the person in a way that that is meaningful, and also stays there if needed, or they get put back. I mean, we're talking some impressive technology. I mean, the camera is a 3,200 megapixel camera. I mean, that's just huge. And then and during this test run, It captured millions of galaxies and stars scattered across the Milky Way, in addition to 2,104 never seen before asteroids. I mean, just the numbers are just colossal.
Yeah.
Um,
Sp-
but fundamentally, as you said, it's just an alerting system, and so it's just how do we do data management?
you say colossal numbers. 800,000 is a lot. You did you see what their goal is?
No, I don't. Oh, the 7 million
7
alerts a night.
million. 7 million alerts per night. Um, yeah, there's going to be some real careful consideration that needs to go into sort of what this sorting and filtering system looks like to get down to what actually matters, right? Are you going to tag it with certain planets? Are you going to tag it with certain astronomical designators? I don't know what they're actually called, but I would imagine there's a bunch of different designators for the cosmic bodies. And so, how do you tag them appropriately? How does this system understand what all that stuff is, and how does it parse it? Hopefully, there's some automated systems behind the scenes that know exactly what it's looking at, and then it can sort of tie those to the notifications. If this is just like, uh, you know, we noticed this change in this part of the sky. How specific are these notifications? I don't know, but being blasted with this many alerts is a huge problem. And actually, we've been speaking a lot about the lab tonight. um
Mm.
we have somebody in the lab who's really interested in communications in disaster scenarios. You can imagine what would happen if we started getting like an asteroid headed towards Earth, if we got like 7 million notifications about it, just the trajectory just aiming towards us. Like, that would be that wouldn't be the most efficient way to communicate, I don't think. But uh
I mean, there's a lot here around. I mean, there's some other. I guess we'll go to the wider organization again because there's something to be said here about the. I think what they're trying to get to is data transparency and immediacy.
mm,
So basically, one of the things that they sort of highlight is that these will be able to go out and they'll be able to quote the article within minutes with each image. Say, here is everything. Go for it. There you go. That's um, that it's just available. Whereas other organizations have had when they've got data like this, they've got implicit holds on it, so they don't have to release it straight away. They do have to release it within time period. So if this is just saying just chuck it out there and see what you see, it does fit into some film narratives where actually it's amateur astronomers find things rather than
yeah.
the officials because you've got so many more people doing that. Um, so yeah, it's really quite clever. I mean, the bit as I think that you alluded to earlier is metadata. Metadata is going to be such a key part of this, um, and basically making sure each picture is tagged with enough metadata to be able to distribute it properly, but then also evolve that metadata as to what is found on that piece, so then you can see changes over time. Um, I mean, again, just going back to the actual physical aspect of this thing, the mirror in the camera is 28 foot.
Yeah.
I mean, having to manage, maintain, operate. So, I mean, the operation will be largely automated, I should imagine. But just to maintain such a device that is, these things are not cheap and are not simple to manipulate. But presumably, it's going to need maintaining, cleaning, whatever. Um, that's a lot, isn't it?
Here's the coin, right? So the fact that we can democratize this to small institutions, amateur astronomers being able to publish their findings, that's awesome. All right, Barry, final thoughts on the I could sit here and talk all night about this. Final thoughts on the astronomy uh oversaturation of alerts.
Um, this is the classic organizational HCI design problem of having so much information coming in, and how do we make sure that people have the ability to see the right information when they need to get it, because it's not only going to be available, it's got to be available in a timely manner to whatever they're using that data for. So I think it's a really cool story, and I think I'd be really keen to understand how they solve the practicalities of data allocation, subscription, and the actual data management of it. So well done to them for being able to democratize the data in such a way, and look forward to see where it goes in the future.
Two final thoughts from me. This sort of always on sky, the sky that doesn't sleep. As the title would imply, I think having this type of thing would this might change our expectations around astronomy in a way that is maybe not healthy. Having sort of these expectations that there will be findings every day or every night, I don't think is a healthy way to think about our discoveries of the cosmos. I think there's there will be needing to be some sort of expectation setting. Um, on the flip side, though, I think this is a very positive story, and I think that this might actually feed some of those citizen science programs or platforms that actually changes how the public participates in astronomy and science education. So I think ultimately it's a good thing. We just got to figure out the filtering problem. Okay. All right.
So
With that, thank you to our friends over at Engadget and Gizmodo for our news stories this week. If you want to follow along, we do post the links to the original articles in our Discord, where you can join us for more discussion on these stories and much more. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to see what's going on in the field of aviation right after this. If only the Patreon support could afford me better internet in my area, that would be really the trick here. I cannot wait until Google Fiber comes. Let's just say that. Huge thank you, as always, to our patrons. You keep the lights on over here. You keep all the services that we use running, and you fund the lab, believe it or not. A lot of the stuff that we're doing over there requires resources that we need access to, and you all are making it happen. So thank you so much for helping contribute to not only this podcast, but human factors science communication in general. We truly appreciate it. If you have the means to and want to become a Patreon supporter, patreon.com/human factors cast is the place to be. And there will be some additional benefits for patrons coming soon. So stay tuned for that announcement. There's some exciting stuff brewing behind the scenes. Okay, we've done this for the last couple episodes here, and I think this has been a really huge hit. A lot of people like this, so we're gonna keep doing it. We're gonna do it anyway. Let's get into our next segment. We call This Week in Aerospace, brought to you by our friends over at the HFES Aerospace Systems Technical Group. Alina, Phil, what's going on in aerospace?
Welcome back to the podcast. This is Elena and Phil from the Aerospace Systems Technical Group at HFES. Today, we're talking about something that sits at the intersection of aviation safety and human well-being, pilot mental health. Before we begin, a quick note. Today's episode touches on mental health topics, including stress and psychological well-being in high responsibility roles. If this is a sensitive topic for you, please feel free to skip this episode. We also want to note that we're not mental health professionals, and this conversation is for informational purpose only. It is not intended as medical or psychological advice. All right, let's jump back in. When we think about aviation safety, we often think about technology, training, and procedures. But aviation is a human-centered system, and the mental well-being of pilots play a critical role.
In recent years, several high-profile events have brought this issue into the spotlight. One of the most widely discussed cases was the Germanwings Flight 9525, which profoundly changed the conversation around pilot mental health worldwide. But beyond extreme cases like this accident, There's a quieter everyday reality. Pilots face stressors like financial strain, fatigue, divorce, family pressures, performance demands, just like all of us, but within a highly regulated, high responsibility profession. Research suggests that this is not a small issue. A 2021 study found that nearly half of the surveyed pilots met criteria for at least mild depressive symptoms, and yet many do not seek for help.
And that's a very key point, not seeking help. Because in aviation, mental health is not just a personal matter, it's tied directly to medical certification. Many pilots worry that reporting symptoms or seeking care could jeopardize their certificate and ultimately their career. So we have this tension. Mental health challenges are relatively common, but structural and cultural barriers discourage pilots from help seeking. Researchers have described this as a cultural and structural gap. The system promotes safety, but it may unintentionally discourage openness. So the big question becomes, how do you support pilots without increasing fear or stigma?
And that's where pilot peer support programs come in. Most people are familiar with the Employee Assistant Program, in which you call a hotline and speak to a psychologist or a counselor provided by your employer. But pilot peer support is different. Instead of calling an external professional, a pilot speaks with another trained pilot.
And that difference is why a peer support program is helpful. Pilots operate in a very specific professional culture, one built around precision, discipline, and performance under pressure. A fellow pilot will have a better understanding of the cockpit environment, the responsibility of demand, irregular schedules, and the unspoken norms of the profession. Peer supports aren't just colleagues offering casual advice. They receive structural training to handle issues like burnout, performance anxiety, fear after an incident, depression, and life stressors. The idea is to create a confidential, non-punitive first point of contact.
And confidentiality is absolutely central. If pilots fear that speaking up could cost their piloting license, they simply will not talk. Effective peer support depends on building trust. In 2024, researchers outlined 9 core competencies that define an effective peer support in aviation. These include skills such as active listening, maintaining confidentiality, demonstrating emotional intelligence, and knowing when to refer someone to professional care. What I found particularly striking is that these competencies are almost the opposite of traditional pilot training. Pilots are trained to identify problems quickly and execute procedures. Pilots are told to put their emotion into a box before stepping into the aircraft so as to focus solely on the mission. But peer support requires slowing down, listening without immediately trying to fix the issue.
And that contrast is fascinating. In the cockpit, decisiveness is essential, but in peer support, empathy is essential. Instead of running a checklist, you're building rapport. And this isn't just theoretical. Organizations are actively implementing these programs. For example, the Airline Pilot Association, ALPA, offers recurrent peer support training to its members. In Europe, the European Union Aviation Safety Agency has evaluated how peer support programs are being implemented across airlines. They found that large airlines reported that their support programs were fully operational by early 2023, but that implementation rate dropped to 63% for smaller airlines. They also reported that pilots strongly prefer direct personal contact with the peer than official company channels such as web platforms. There are also testimonials from Canadian pilot groups describing how peer support has helped colleagues navigate difficult periods while staying engaged in their careers.
So implementation is happening. There's institutional support, and there's professional training. But here's the important question. Do we actually know if these programs work. Despite strong interest and positive anecdotal reports, scientific evidence is still limited. A large scoping review published just this February screened more than 3,800 documents, and they identified only 3 empirical studies that formally evaluated pilot peer support programs. There was one survey that identified reason for pilots to contact their peer support program, and they found that pilots with clinically relevant symptoms were significantly less likely to seek support. The 2 other studies were focus groups and interviews with pilots on their perceived role of the peer support program. So we see that there's enthusiasm for pilot peer support, but there's still a significant evidence gap, especially for longitudinal impact of such programs.
Regulators and airlines need data to understand effectiveness, long-term outcomes, and potential unintended consequences. Mental health challenges are real. Barriers to care are real. Peer support program aims to address the gap in a way that aligns with the aviation culture.
Pilot peer support programs represent a cultural shift to empower pilots in addressing mental health challenges. They may not be a complete solution, but they signal something important. Aviation safety builds on human well-being. All right, so that's all we had for this week. So thanks for listening. And now back to Nick and Barry.
Eventually, whenever it chooses to switch over, it'll be back to us. Did your lights go out, sir?
Yeah, they have, and I'm trying to fix them back. It's just a day, isn't it?
What an episode this has been. Well, hey,
Uh,
thank you, Phil. Thank you, Elena. Appreciate you as always for breaking down the latest in the field of aviation, aerospace. Yes. Hey, let's get into one more thing before we go. We just need to say one more thing. Barry, what is your one more thing this week?
ironically, no, I guess so. People in the lab and some others will be aware of this, but I've been trying to create some human factors tools, and I've been involved in developing software for a while, and you launch stuff, and that's all fine. I've never had a problem, but recently decided I rather than moaning about the fact that there's no HF tools out there that I want to use that I like, that's not just a spreadsheet, I'm going to create some. And so I've developed, in the past couple of months, I've been developing a task analysis tool and finally shared it with some people for beta testing, of which I think, Nick, you've dived in there and a couple of others have as well. Give me really cool feedback. That's fantastic. But I've never been so nervous about having other people look at a piece of my work. And I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's because it's like you know, showing off a bit what I can do, or because it's my peers who are doing it and it's not just a customer in a way. It's people who actually know what they're talking about. But it's been a really different, almost nerve-wracking, nervous thing about saying to people, can you come and have a look at this and tell me what you think? It just felt like something completely different. So yeah, no, that's just been a bit of a massive experience for me in the past 2 weeks, which is weird.
Hopefully everybody's been nice about it and it's not like, hey, you should have had an example in here and like what gives.
Yeah, I know if people are coming that critical and then highlighting where the stuff doesn't work, then I mean that'd be really bad.
No, the example thing was not your fault. It was not your fault. I'm assuming.
Oh, we fixed it. So that was that,
Yeah.
that, and that's exactly the point. Is there's been a couple of other things as well that you're sitting there going, but I can see this. Why can't? Oh, okay. That's why we get users in to have a look at it.
And this is not gas. It's genuinely a cool tool, and I'm excited to see others try it because it's a cool tool, man. You've built something cool.
Cool, thank you. We shall see. We're debating about what are the next steps, because other people have suggested that we make it make it available as an external tool and a paid for thing. And so that's my next thing. I don't know what we do with that, but we shall see. That'll be even more nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I'm sure.
What's your one more thing then, Nick?
Well, speaking of cool tools, you like Lego. You've in fact built some space Lego. And I like Lego, but I don't get Lego very often. My son, on the other hand, has received something in the neighborhood of like 10 Lego sets over the last 6 months for his birthday and Christmas, and has like struggled to build them. He's 6 years old. He, some of these sets are like 10 plus, not the most difficult thing to build, but the sheer number count of some of them is rather intimidating, right? And so he's done these big builds by himself, but he really enjoys the process of like having somebody help him and build with him. So I don't know if you're aware of this, Barry, but Lego has a builder app. And I think that's pretty common knowledge, is that there's a builder app for Lego that has like the interactive instructions. You can actually flip the model around in 3D space so you can actually see how all the pieces come together. The other thing that I've discovered with this Lego builder app is if you have two devices, so let's say a phone and another phone, you can put together build parties. And so you can collaboratively build a Lego set together with other people. And this has been such an amazing like bonding experience for me and my son. Like he loves building Lego. He just doesn't love the whole thing. I love building Lego. And so now we can build a Lego set together. So we built the Ultimate Collector Series R2D2 together over the weekend, and it's really great. We've actually built a couple different models using this. One mode is basically like using the R2D2 example. You could be like, I build one leg, you build another leg, and then we, one of us builds this part of the body, another one of us builds this part of the body, and then we slap them together at the end, and it's like complete pieces. Then there's the other way that my son likes doing it, which is like this even more collaborative than that. You're opening up one bag and working on that bag together. So I'll build a part, he'll build a part, and then we'll trade parts and pieces, and then we're basically like passing around R2D2, like slapping pieces on it as the build is going on. And because the build is connected in across this party, it understands how much of the thing has been built, and so it'll stop you at key points. It'll make you go back and build things with other bags, so that way you can help kind of clean up. If I'm really fast and he's really slow, I can come back and help him with more pieces, and then we put them together. It's a really cool thing. I cannot say enough positive things about this experience. If you love Lego, if you love building things, and want to do it with like a partner, you could literally do this for date night. You could do this, with your friends for like an outing or something. Like you can literally build together, and it's very cool and very well done, and just kudos to the Lego team for that. Super cool.
Nice. Sounds great.
All right. Well, that's it for today, everyone. If you like this episode and enjoy some of the discussion about space, I'll encourage you to go to listen to episode 305, specifically that one. You know why? Because we talk about the evolution of space fashion, where we actually talk about the Axiom spacesuits. And yes, we do have a lab connection. Katie is our lab connection to that spacesuit. You can go listen to more about that in that episode 305. Comment wherever you're listening what you think of the story this week. Was it a train wreck? Maybe. For more in-depth discussion, you can join us on our Discord community. Visit our official website, sign up for our newsletter, stay up to date with all the latest in human factors news. If you like what you hear, you want to support the show and get me better internet, you can leave us a 5-star review wherever you're watching or listening right now. That is free for you to do and really helps out. 2, if you have if you want to be a little bit more helpful, you can let your friends and family know about the show. Word of mouth, it really helps us grow. And 3, if you have the financial means to and want to, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/humanfactorscast. As always, links to all of our socials and our website are in the description of this episode. Mr. Barry Kirby, thank you for dealing with my internet on the show today. Where can our listeners go and find you if they want to talk about Axiom spacesuits?
Well, you can come and find me on LinkedIn and Facebook. But if you want to come and also chat and hear me chat to people about human factors in general, you can find me on 1202 The Human Factors Podcast at 1202pod.com.
As for me, I've been your host, Nick Roome. You can find me across social media at Nick_Roome. Thanks again for tuning in to Human Factors Cast. Until next time, It depends.